Why the red heifer? What was so special about the red heifer? Red heifer was a cow that was completely red, didn't have more than 2 non-red hairs on it. It was unworked. It never had a yoke on its neck, and it's extremely valuable because they're very, very rare. So when this red heifer was burnt and its ashes are mixed with certain things like azov and whatever, and they got the water from this red heifer, this was used by the Kohanim to sprinkle on anybody who's tameh in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, and the person who was tameh will become pure. But there was a side effect. What's the side effect? The side effect is that the person who's performing the ceremony, performing the purifying ceremony, who is the Kohen, whereas he, through this red heifer water, throwing on the impure man, whereas he makes the impure person pure, he himself becomes impure. Very strange side effects. And this idea baffled everybody, including Shlomo HaMelech. So how do we understand this? The answer is we don't understand it. The Kohen who is pure performs this ceremony on an impure person. He purifies the impure person. That should be enough. But no, the Kohen himself then becomes impure. So it sounds unfair. What's going on? So I heard a beautiful explanation to this. Why was this mitzvah given before Matan Torah? Because a person, when he wants to bring somebody close to Torah, when he wants to help to purify somebody's neshama, when he wants to get somebody on the right track, to do the right thing, to bring him close to Hashem, sometimes you have to get down and dirty, and yourself, it's got to be difficult for you. You've got to make yourself, quote unquote, impure to get somebody else pure. It's not just a case of, I'm going to help the other person, but only on my own terms, only when it's good and convenient for me. In other words, I'm a 9-to-5 Jew. I'm helping other people, but I'm helping you only until 5 o'clock. Then I got to go home. I've got to read my paper. I've got to go on my internet. I've got to catch up on all my text messages. I've got so much to do. Come back another time. Come back tomorrow. Come back next week. That's not what a Jew's all about. It's got to be, it doesn't have to be. But if that's what it takes, if it's got to be painful, it's going to be difficult for you, you have to work past 5 o'clock. You've got to work till 6 o'clock. You've got to go out your way. You've got to work weekends. Sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes your family demands you. Sometimes your spare time suddenly becomes all used up. And you're working to help other people. Comes the red heifer to say, that's okay, you can do that as well. If it's difficult for you, that's part of the process. That's part of the process for you. And I'll tell you a beautiful story I heard from Rav Ephraim Shapiro, I believe it was. He says like this. He says there was once a Rebbe in a girls' school who became very unwell. And this Rebbe, among his class of girls, there was one girl who was very close to this Rebbe and admired this Rebbe very much. And this girl, unbeknownst to anybody, decided she wanted to do something to help that Rebbe, to give him a refuah shalema. It's all well for us that we say, like I say, I always try and say refuah shalema or le'ilui nishmat. Really, that's not enough. We need to be doing more. So what did this girl do? She took something on. She took something on over and above, and nobody knew what it was until inadvertently it came out. What was it? You wouldn't believe what this girl took on. She said to herself, until my Rebbe gets better, I refuse to sleep on a pillow. I'll sleep with my head on the floor. She took that on, not knowing if her Rebbe was going to get better, not knowing when her Rebbe was going to get better. So she slept day after day, week after week, month after month, after an entire year. When her Rebbe got better, that's when it came out that she'd been sleeping with her head on the ground, with her head on the bed and no pillow. And only then it came out by accident, inadvertently. And her Rebbe at that point, Baruch Hashem, he got better and he benched Gomel, and that's when she stopped and she went back to sleeping with her head on a pillow. Now that is what we call somebody who gets the message of the red heifer. You've got to get down, it's got to be uncomfortable for you. If that's what it takes, and more often than not, that's what it does take. Think of all the situations that we could help, that we would be shaykh to siyata d'shmaya if we only put ourselves out for other people. All the people in Israel who are suffering, all the bombs, we don't have to talk about this, we know all about this. The world doesn't know, but we know. We as Jews, we know. Imagine if each one of us took on something else, to not do something that we enjoy, not to have chocolate, for argument's sake, during the week. On Shabbat, it's something different. Not to think of any ta'anug that you have and say, I'm not going to have this ta'anug, whatever it is, this pleasure, because I'm doing this out of sympathy or out of empathy for the people in Israel, or out of empathy to the people who are ill. Imagine what an effect that would have. It's definitely worth thinking about. It's got nothing to do with my shir tonight. I just thought I'd want to mention that to you. Very often, when I discuss the parasha with my family at home, I always talk about when we discuss Pirkei Avot or Parashat HaShavua, and I discuss it with my children, that very often they come up with something interesting, and whenever I get a chance after Shabbat, I'll quickly write it down and I'll speak it out. I say it in front of the camera, or whatever shir I'm at, I'll speak and I say it in their name. And this week, my son Binyamin had a beautiful chiddush about last week's parasha. And I was delighted when I heard it. I hadn't heard it before. I didn't know if anybody said it before. For him, it certainly was a chiddush. And I said to myself, I'll write it down and I'll speak it over. But then I thought to myself, it's okay for me telling other people's chiddushim, but I think it would be more effective if we heard it from the man himself. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to my son Binyamin.
Yosef has just told his brothers that he's Yosef, and he wants to send a message to his father that he's alive. But they didn't have text then, so Yosef had to send a messenger. So he wanted to send his niece, Serach bas Asher, because she could play the harp. So she went outside Yaakov's tent and played the harp, singing, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai. I'm Yosef, is my father still alive? She sang this so that Yaakov wouldn't die of shock, since he'd been mourning his son Yosef for 22 years already. As soon as Yaakov realized his son was alive, he went straight outside and blessed Serach that she would never die. When it was time for her to die, she went to heaven alive. So the question arises, what's the significance of Yaakov blessing her to have a long life? How is this a fitting reward? Why couldn't he have blessed her with children? Because she informed him about his child. So the fifth of the 10 commandments is to respect your parents, and you'll get a long life. There's also a rule that grandchildren are the same as children. So because Serach helped her grandfather, which is the same as her father, she gets a long life. So Yaakov wanted her to get this reward through him, as a shliach from Hashem, so he blessed her with a long life.
Excellent. Okay. He's a very good child, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So this week's parasha is Parshas Vayechi, Perek Memchet Pasuk Beit. Yaakov Avinu is on his deathbed. Vayaged liYaakov Vayomer. Yaakov was told, Hine bincha Yosef ba elecha. Behold, your son Yosef is coming to you. Vayitchazek Yisrael. And Yisrael strengthened himself, that's Yaakov. Vayeshev al hamita. And he sat on his bed. Vayom Yaakov al Yosef kel Shaddai. That's when Yaakov already gives Yosef his parting bracha. I've got a question on this. What difference does it make what Yaakov was doing at the time when he gave the bracha? Really, if you think about it, the Torah should say, Yaakov was told that his son Yosef is coming. And Yaakov said to Yosef, and he gives him the bracha. What does it mean? He sat up, he strengthened himself, he sat on his bed. What relevance does it make? Standing, sitting, strengthened himself. Okay, we know he was weak, he was old, he was dying. What difference does it make? So, I heard on a Dvar Torah by Rav Mordechai Kamenetsky, he tells the following beautiful story. He says, in the mid 1800s, when the President of America was a man called Abraham Lincoln, that in, I think it was 1860 something, 1863 if I'm not mistaken, he was about to sign a certain declaration. I think it was a Declaration of Emancipation, which is basically what Abraham Lincoln went down in history for. So he had to sign this document of emancipation. He had the document, had it drawn up in front of him. It was midday. Everyone's watching him, waiting for him to sign. Takes his quill, dips it in the ink. His hand is shaking. Puts the pen down. There's a pause. Again, he picks the pen up, dips it in the ink, puts the pen to paper. His hand is shaking. He puts it away. This goes on a few times. And people are already wondering, President Lincoln signed the paper. Everyone's waiting. Well, once you signed it, we'll go in for lunch and end of story. What's the problem? So what happened? He said, gentlemen, my hand has been shaking since 9 o'clock in the morning. I know that this document I'm about to sign will go down in history as probably the greatest moment in my life. I feel that nervousness. And because I'm so nervous, and if I sign the paper, when my hand is shaking, people will come away and they'll say, look at the handwriting. It's all shaky. He was nervous. He was unsure. So I need to wait. I need to get myself together. And then I'm going to sign. And with that, he took the pen and he signed Abraham Lincoln on the paper. Says Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, what do we learn from this story? He said, you know what difference it made that Yaakov sat up on his bed and he strengthened himself? Anybody could have said, looking at Yaakov, a man dying, delirious, saying all these things, blessing Ephraim, blessing Manasseh. Why are you only blessing these two sons? What about those only grandchildren? What about all your sons? Why are you blessing the grandchildren first? And there's so many questions. These are the musings of a delirious man before his death. Can you imagine that? People would say, what's going on here? A man is lying. So what did he do? He said, I don't want any room for error. I don't want anybody saying, this is a man. And these are wild statements he's making when he's in his death throes. Death throes, rather, not death row. Death throes. So what did he do? He got up, he sat up, and he spoke with clarity. He was lucid. He was compos mentis. And he wanted everybody else to know that. Just like Lahavdil, Abraham Lincoln wanted everybody to know that he signed that document with confidence. Yaakov Avinu also left no room for error, left no room to sow the seeds of doubt. He sat up and he spoke with clarity. He took all his energy so that nobody would have any doubt that these, or think that these were the rantings of somebody who was just about to die. There's a very, very beautiful, important lesson. A person should always speak with confidence and not with hesitation. My father, Allah Shalom, always used to say to me, he said, if you're going to say anything, don't say anything wishy-washy. Don't stutter, don't... Speak with confidence. If you're going to say anything at all, speak with confidence. It's a very important lesson he taught me. I'm still learning it, but... Okay. Next Perek is Perek Memtet. Oh, I want to mention something about the brachot. We mentioned in previous shurim about the brachot of Ephraim and Manasseh. And we talked about why did Yaakov Avinu bless these two brothers? What about the Shvatim? He didn't want to bless his sons first. He goes to the Einaklach, goes to the grandchildren. And there's another question you can ask. Why this? We've also brought this up in previous shurim. Why did Yaakov bless Ephraim before Manasseh? The older one was Manasseh. You bless in age. When we bless our children on Friday night, we start with the oldest, we end with the youngest. That's how it is. So Yaakov Avinu sets a precedent for all the generations coming from him. He starts with the younger one. What's going on? So we've given a number of answers, and there are many, many answers for this. I just want to talk about one answer. First of all, what's the possible message you can get from this? You've got all his sons in front of him, and then he picks the grandchildren, and he picks the younger one. It sounds like that he's talking about favoritism. You pick two, and then you pick the younger one. What's the older one going to say? What are your sons going to say? Sounds like favoritism. Sounds like what got them to Egypt in the first place. Favoritism for Yosef. And then the whole thing with the jealousy with the brothers. And then Yosef getting sold to Egypt. Yaakov, what are you doing? History is repeating itself. Here's one answer. And then I'm going to give my own little take on it. There are some circumstances where instead of going around and explaining and ratifying and confirming and condoning and explaining and all the other words you want to throw, sometimes you just have to do it. You have to do what you know is right, and it needs to be done, and the explanations are either unsaid or they're put away till afterwards. This is an exact case in point. There was a reason why these two brothers got blessed together instead of the sons first. Because as we mentioned previously, Ephraim and Manasseh had something special about them. Sorry, not special, unique. That's something unique about them. Because as opposed to all the other tribes, they were the only tribes that were born outside of the land of Israel. And just as significant, they were not just born outside of Israel and all that connotes, but they were also born in a strange land, a horrible land, a land full of debauchery and licentiousness and idol worship and any evil you can think of and all the evil you can't think of. It was all there in Egypt. And that's where these two boys were born. Who do they have to look up to? Pharaoh? Potiphar? Potiphar's wife? That's who they had to look up to? All the Egyptian courtiers? The Egyptians themselves? No. Nobody else other than their father and their mother. That's it. Out of the whole land of Egypt, they could trust nobody. They could be influenced by nobody. They're the typical home-schooled children. And yet, look who they became. Not only did they retain their Yiddishkeit, not only did they become shining lights in a land that was full of the worst evil, but they attained the status that no other one of Yaakov's grandchildren attained. They attained the status of tribes. They joined the ranks of their uncles on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. They became two of the tribes. Yes, it was Ephraim and Manasseh, together with Uncle Reuven, Uncle Shimon, Uncle Issachar, Uncle Zavulun, all of them together on the breastplate, part of the 12 tribes. So of course, Yaakov didn't have to explain this. He just had to get on and do it. It was special circumstances required a special action, a quick action. Didn't have to require explaining and everything has to do. No, it has to be done, it had to be done. Of course, you have to remember, Yaakov, as we mentioned, he's dying. He didn't have time to come out with the whole ganze Sprach and explain everything to everybody. It had to be done. But the question still is very pertinent. That it would inspire jealousy. It would incite hatred. It was history repeating itself. Why did Yaakov put himself in that position? And even if he had to do it, surely that was the collateral damage. There's bound to be some enmity, some jealousy. There are many, many grandchildren. There are 10 other Shvatim. 11 other Shvatim, actually. So what's going on? So this is my own thought. I'll give you a mashal. You know, have you ever been in a situation where a child is being taught to swim, or a child is being taught to ride a bicycle? I've never seen a child get on a two-wheeler and start cycling away, and that's the end of it. Suddenly he goes from a bike with stabilizers, which is easy to ride. You've got 2 extra wheels at the back. And then he goes to a regular 2-wheel bike and he's off, he goes. It's never the case. What happens? You put him on the bike, you help him a little bit, you let go, he goes for 1 meter and he falls off. And then you try him again, maybe he goes for 2 meters this time and he falls off. He might hurt himself, he might graze himself. Or you put a child in the swimming pool and he might go and he might sink a little bit. Maybe after you take off his armbands, you want him to go on his own. You want him to see if he can float. And he sinks. And you pull him up. And he goes, "Oh, Daddy, I don't want to do it again." Now, what would you do to a child who falls off his bike or who sinks in the swimming pool? And you have to pull him up. What do? You say, "Oh, don't worry about it. Come, let's forget it. Let's leave it." And you take him out. And you don't continue to teach him. Like what happened to one of my friends. I don't know if he was sinking or whatever in the swimming pool, but he was never taught how to swim. He was a master of everything. Fantastic athlete, football player, tennis, everything. Can you swim? No, you can't swim. How come? Oh, I don't know, I was never taught. So what do you do to a person who suffers a trauma? And he hurts himself on the pedal bike, on the push bike. The first thing you do, you put him back on. The child has a bad experience at the swimming pool, you put him back in the water straight away. A person, Rahman al has a bad experience with flying, what do? Back in the plane, go fly somewhere else. And if you don't do it straight away, the fear stays with you, the trauma stays with you, and then it's much more difficult to get over it. Zahaklal, that's the rule. That's a rule in psychology. You suffer a trauma, you get right back in and you tackle it there and then. You don't let the fear fester. You tackle it head on there and then while it's still fresh. So I want to suggest, in my humble opinion, this might be the same thing here. Yaakov's sons learnt a tremendous lesson. Their father suffered 22 years of mourning, pseudo-mourning. Because mourning, when you mourn a person, you mourn a person who passed away. But Yaakov never knew that his son passed away. Otherwise he would have mourned him for a year and finished. 22 years he was in limbo. He didn't know what was happening. He just knew the Shekhinah is not with me. I feel miserable. I sent my son into this problem, this whole thing. I sent him there. And what's more, he knew. When I sent my son to the brothers, telling him, go to your brothers and inquire with them about them, he knew he was going into danger. Yosef knew full well. Now Yaakov had to live with this pain for 22 long years. Can you imagine that? You know, they say when somebody is involved in, let's say, is involved in a death or something, is involved, and a person, if he's there and he could have prevented something, or he thinks he could have prevented something, what does that person do? He beats himself up. He says, what if, I could have, I should have, I would have. And you replay the thing again and again and again, and you never get over that thing. You're always constantly replaying, what if I would have put my hand out? I hope I'm not offending anybody, either here or on TorahAnytime.com. I just want to bring the point out. What if I could have pulled my hand? What if I could have... There's so many things. And you replay it in slow motion, and the whole thing... That's what Yaakov was doing for 22 years. I sent my son there, and he knew he was going into the mouth of the lion, and he still went, because he was an obedient son. Imagine how Yaakov would have felt. Now the sons all learnt that lesson. They learnt it the hard way. And now they saw the truth, that this was all a process. And all the jealousy, and the selling, and the whole thing with Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, and the prison, and the viceroy of Egypt, the whole thing was, like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, was living the dream. It was all part of the prophecy. So now that's all been dealt with. Now we've learned the lesson of the jealousy. Now Yaakov says, we've all learned our lesson here. So now let's do things the right way. I didn't show favoritism to Yosef, said Yaakov. I taught him all my Torah. Did I meant for you to be jealous? No, of course not. So now I'm giving a bracha. You've all had that negative experience. You came to the wrong conclusion with the jealousy in the past. So now I'm giving a bracha. You have to trust me. This is the right thing to do. Get over it. Get over what happened before. That's all in the past. You've paid for it. Now I'm doing the same thing. You have to trust me. Don't go down that same road again. So what happened after, I'm going forward a little bit. What happens after Yaakov dies? After Yaakov dies, something very strange happens. The brothers sent a message to Yosef. And they tell him, do you know that our father Yaakov said to us before he died that you, Yosef, have to forgive us for what we did? And that was the message they sent to Yosef. Our father says you should forgive us. Why did the brothers say that? Because they were worried that their brother Yosef would take revenge. To suffer for 22 years for an ordinary person, not Yosef, for an ordinary person, that's 22 years full of revenge. You want to, how can you get over that? Again, we're talking about an ordinary person. But Yosef had no revenge in his heart whatsoever. But the brothers didn't know that. So they said that our father wants you to forgive us. He instructed us you forgive us. But that was not the truth. Yaakov said no such thing. So what comes out? That the brothers made up the story that our father said, our father said no such thing. Our father knew, Yaakov Avinu knew that Yosef would never take revenge. Yaakov spent 17 years nurturing this child, teaching him every bit of Torah that he knew. He knew Yosef inside out, back to front. Yosef's not the revenge type. He's not the avenging type. He's Yosef HaTzadik. Tzadikim don't go on revenge missions. Yaakov knew that very well. So why did the brothers see fit to make up a lie, in effect it's a lie, and tell it to Yosef? But davar sheker tirachak, you're going to keep away from lies. What's going on? So it comes out that for the sake of shalom, for the sake of peace, you're allowed to bend the truth. But then you can ask the question, bend the truth? Bend the truth is one thing. Like with Avram and Sarah. Hashem bent the truth so as not to cause a machloket between Avram and Sarah. But there's bending the truth and there's telling something which is totally untrue. How come? What's going on here? I heard a beautiful answer to this from Rav Yaakov Neiman. He says as follows. And the answer is in Perek Memtet, Pasuk Aleph. And I'll read you. Vayikra Yaakov el banav. This is Yaakov's swan song. His final will and testament. He's now moved on from his grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh. He's moved on to his sons. He says, Vayomer Yaakov el banav. Yaakov said to his sons, Vayomer, and he said, Hey asfu, gather together, va'agid alachem, and I will tell you, et asher yikradchem ba'achrit hayomim, what will happen at the end of days. Chazal tell us that he wanted to tell them the date of Mashiach. He said, you know Mashiach's coming. You want to know when? It's going to be then. But the Shekhinah left him at that point, and he couldn't say. He was confounded. Why? Because if we would have known, then all the generations leading up to Mashiach would feel despair. They would say, Mashiach's not coming in our lifetime. And they would feel yeush, despair. So, that's what happened. He never told them. But look at the wording here. Hey asfu, gather yourselves. What did Yaakov mean when he said gather yourselves? He should have just said, come here and I will tell you. What do you mean, gather yourselves? Hey asfu. So there's an interesting comment on this word. What did he mean, gather? He meant gather together, come together. Be ba'achdut. You want to know when the Geula is going to come? You want to know my blessing for all of you? Hey asfu, come together. Be united. You'll only get the Geula when you're united. So he was saying, if you want to be united, there's only one way you can be united. You can't be united and hate each other. You have to be united, you have to love each other. You have to be tight like this, one with the other. And you know how you become He'asfu, how you become Ba'achdut, how you become united, how you become B'shalom. Everything has to be up front. And you do all it takes to be united. In effect, what was he saying? In effect, Yaakov was saying like this. He was saying, there might be a time when there'll be machloket, when there will be a period, a separation, and you might feel distance one from the other. I don't want that, said Yaakov. And you need to do what it takes, even if it means telling a lie, in order that you become ba'achdut. So you see, in fact, implicit in Yaakov's words, he did tell them in his name that you need to be together. I want you to be together. I want you to forgive your brothers. I want your brothers to be forgiven. So when the brothers came and said, our father told us, he did tell them in all but directly that he wanted there to be shalom. So of course, the brothers did not lie. And we all think, oh, it's a lie, but no. This is what Yaakov told them. So they were telling the truth. So in Perek Nun, Pasuk Hey, Avi Ishbiani Lemor, my father made me swear, Hishbian like Hishbia. Hinei anochi mate. Behold, I'm going to die. Bekivri asher kariti li beret Canaan shamatik bereni. I want you to bury me, he says to his son Yosef, in Machpelah, because that's the family burial plot. He uses the words asher kariti li. Kariti has the word in it, kiri, the first three letters, kaf, resh, yud. What is a kri? A kri is a pile. What was Yaakov saying when he used the word karitili? What pile are we talking about? And what's it got to do with Machpelah? So the answer is that Yaakov bought the cave of Machpelah fair and square from his brother Esau. Of course, he bought the firstborn rights. He paid for that with a bowl of soup. That was years ago. But he wanted to buy his place in Machpelah. So now he approached his brother Esau. Now, of course, Yaakov was in a buying position. Esau wanted to sell. Yaakov wanted to buy. So what happened? Well, I'll tell you what should have happened. What you and I would do if we were in this type of business situation and you had a buyer and a seller. The buyer would say, you have something that I want to buy. I will make you an offer. Will you take £1,000? The seller would say, £1,000? You must be joking. It's worth at least 10. The buyer says, okay, fair enough. I'll give you 4. 4? You're insulting me. Give me 8. 8's too much. Will you take 6? 7. 6.5, deal. Shake on it, done. The sale goes ahead and everyone goes home happy. That's not what happened here. That's not what was negotiated. In fact, there was no negotiation. And we get that from the word kri. Because what happened was that Yaakov took every single penny of the money that he earned outside of Eretz Israel, or it could be inside of Eretz Israel. Anyway, he took all of his money. He made a big pile. He made a whole visual thing. He didn't pay Esau by bank transfer. He didn't give him a check. He didn't give him a note, a promissory note. He put all the cash, muzuman, nahdi, all the kesef, paisa, piled it all up and said, Esau, look at this. Now, of course, Esau sees the entire pile of money and his eyes start blinking and he sees the pound signs, the dollar sign. Ooh, look at all this. That's not like a figure that's on a computer or written on a check. This is real. He says, okay. He takes everything. Where's the negotiation? Yaakov had to give every penny. Yaakov was the buyer. He could have made an offer first. It's like, you go to an auction and they say, right, we have this certain plate, whatever it is, Noritaki? Noritaki plate here. The bidding is opening at, what's it called? The reserve. The reserve for this plate, Mum, what's the reserve? £100. The reserve is £100. Who's going to be £100? And then a hand goes up. £1,500. I was looking around. £1,500? It's only £100 reserve. And he's okay, right, £1,500, fine. gone. Nobody's going to fight with this guy. He gives a big whacking makkah in the beginning. He doesn't leave room for anybody. But you're in a buying position. Start slow. What is this? You're ruining the whole market. So why did Yaakov come with this offer of everything all in one go? So again, a beautiful answer to this. You have to understand the mindset of Yaakov before this whole thing went on. Yaakov was afraid of Esau. Not because Esau was a Rasha and had a big army. No. That's not what Yaakov was afraid of. Yaakov is not afraid of physical might. Yaakov fought with an angel. Yaakov fought with an angel that the Midrash tells us was it was a third of the size of the world, whatever that means. That angel was huge. Yaakov fought with that angel. I don't know if you can understand what it means in terms of physical size, but anyway, that angel was formidable. Let's put it that way. Okay? So Yaakov is not a nobody. Yaakov's not scared of physical power and physical might. So why was he scared of Esau? You know why he was scared of Esau? Because Esau had two things that Yaakov did not have. Two mitzvot. Would you believe it? Yes, Esau had mitzvot. He wasn't a complete Rasha. He was almost a complete Rasha, but not a complete Rasha. What were these two mitzvot? One, Yishuv Be'eretz Yisrael. All the time, Yaakov, 20 years with Lavan and learning in yeshiva, whatever, he was outside of Israel for a lot of that time. He was away from his parents, but he was with Lavan. 20 years. Meanwhile, Esau was in Israel. You think being in Israel is nothing, means nothing? Yishuv Be'eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. Every 4 amot you walk in, every 4 cubits, or every 6 feet you walk in Israel, it's a separate mitzvah. That you've walked, not that you walked again. It doesn't mean you can go in your kitchen in Israel and walk up and down the kitchen like this and get. It means every 4 steps that you've walked initially. The first time you walk there, it's a different mitzvah. So, 20 years in Israel is nothing. Esau had those 20 years, and Yaakov did not have that. That's one thing. The second thing he had, Kibud Av. He honored his father. We spoke previously that Esau put on his big day Shabbat, put on his suit, and his tie, and his nice shoes, and he went to serve his father. Every time he wanted to serve his father, he was always dressed to the nines. And Yaakov did not have that type of Kibud Av. Notice it's Kibud Av, not Kibud Av V'Ein. Because Esau did not honor his mother at all. It's Kibud Av, his father. But still, it's honoring a parent. So Yaakov said he's got 2 mitzvahs that I don't have. Now, what am I going to do? How am I going to show that I also love these 2 mitzvahs? You know what he did? He took every single penny of his money and he gave it to Esau. What was he doing with that action? You know what he was doing with that action? He was showing his brother 2 things. And in turn, he was showing every generation that came after him the same thing. He was showing him, 1, I'm going to buy that cave of Machpelah. And you know how much it's worth? It's priceless to me. I'm prepared to give every penny I have to have that burial plot in Israel. That's how much I value Israel. You, Esau, you've got a mitzvah living in Israel. But I didn't have that opportunity. But I'm going to show you right here, right now, how much I value Israel. It's worth every penny that I got. Take it. And I'm going to buy my chelek in Eretz Yisrael. Secondly, what was he proving? I'm not buying any plot in Israel. You think this is some random part of Israel I'm buying? I'm buying my ancestral burial plot. This is where my parents are buried. Because I want to be next to my parents and my grandparents. And as my son Binyamin said before, B'nai Bonim Kabonim. Your grandchildren are like your children. So Avraham Avinu is like my father. Because I'm his grandson, I'm like his son. So I want to be near my parents and my grandparents. And my grandparents are also like my parents. So I'm doing the ultimate kibbud av v'aim by being near them. So in the same action, Yaakov showed how much he valued those two mitzvahs that Esav had over him. Value of living in Eretz Yisrael, he put all his money to buy a portion in Eretz Yisrael. Kibbud av v'aim, he put all his money towards being with his parents and his grandparents. What an amazing way of interpreting that action. What a beautiful pshat. That's what Yaakov was doing. One shot, he knocked out every zechut, both zechuyot that his brother had. So now Yaakov is perfect. Esau doesn't have anything on him. There's an important lesson we can get from this, that Yaakov paid all his money for this particular mitzvah. A person in this life can be tested on, first of all, can be tested on anything, but sometimes a person can be tested on how much he values a mitzvah. For instance, if a person has to, first of all, a Jewish male of 13 has to pray 3 times a day with a minyan, right? So a Jewish man has to pray mincha. Now what happens if this mincha conflicts with a business deal? And this business deal could make you £2,000 richer. A person is faced with a choice. Either you take the business deal, which has to be done now, and this is the time of mincha, or you say, forget the business deal, and now I'm going to daven mincha, and we'll leave the business deal. So that's a choice. You take the deal, or you take the mincha with a minyan. If you take the mincha with a minyan and you lose £2,000, it shows that your mincha is worth at least £2,000. Could be that if it was a £3,000 deal, you'd say, the mincha can wait, I'll daven by myself, I'll miss the minyan. Then your mincha is only worth £2,000, not £3,000. So you're putting a value on your mincha. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to be okay. So you fail on the 3,000. You do the mitzvah on the 2,000. It's not a bad thing. You could have done better, but you're showing that this is what your mincha is worth. Now, what happens if, for whatever reason, there's a deal of a lifetime, and you could make £5 million on this deal, and it's a time of mincha. And it's the same person. He's already said no to the £2,000 deal, and he decides, you know what, £5 million is £5 million. I could do a lot of things with that £5 million. I could do a lot of mitzvahs. So I'm not going to daven mincha. And he gives up his mincha completely, because by the time he's finished with the deal, it's dark already. And of course the Yetzer Hara is telling him, no, you can daven twice, you can do tashlumin, and then tashlumin is only if it happens to you b'shogeg. You had no choice. You had a choice. You could say, I'm sorry, I'm predisposed, I have to be somewhere. If now's the only time you can do this deal, then I'm sorry, I have to opt out. It's a hard choice, but it's a choice nonetheless. So now you're showing that your mincha is worth £2,000, but it's not worth £5 million. You put a price tag on your mitzvah. You have an upper limit. What happens if you've got a choice that you could get an unlimited amount of money, or you could lose everything? You could lose your life. It's either daven that mincha and save your life, miss that mincha and save your life, or daven that mincha and lose your life. Or it could be that maybe you're in a situation of anti-Semitism or whatever, or somebody's got a gun to your head and says, I want you to refrain from doing that mitzvah. If you do that mitzvah, I'll kill you here and now. And you do the mitzvah for whatever reason it is. Let's say it's a mitzvah that you have to give your life for, and you give your life for it. You've just proved, first of all, God forbid nobody should be in this position. No Jew should ever have to be in this position. But let's say you give up your life for this. You've just proved that you've given everything you have for this mitzvah. This mitzvah is the most important. You've gone through the ultimate test. There's nothing more important to you than this mitzvah. Now, it doesn't have to come to this. What I'm trying to say is, a person must always show that mitzvot are priceless to you. You will do anything for a mitzvah. Anything. Really and truly, that's what it comes down to. Now, of course, we need guidance with a lot of these things. You could turn around and say, somebody comes to the door and it's for tzedakah. And I know I would give my life for tzedakah, so I'm giving all my money to this person. Okay, so there's also tzedakah at home. So things require guidance. So whereas we have the best of intentions, but there are other mitzvahs we mustn't leave behind. Why, so everything is a shikul. But whenever we get tested on these things, we have to pass the test. We have to show to Hashem that the mitzvot that He gave us are worth, they don't have a worth. They're priceless. They're beyond any price and beyond any effort. This goes very well with what we said at the beginning of the shit. That for a person to pray for his or her Rebbe's life, they want to do without something. They want to do without a pillow. They want to do without having chocolate, or they want to do without any pleasure. They want to show that to do this mitzvah, it's got to be worth something. That's the minimum it's got to be worth. So it's something to take on board, and that's something we've got to learn from Yaakov Avinu. Okay, let's wrap things up now. Let's see if I missed anything else. Yeah. Okay, we're going to finish with this now. When Yaakov died, just before he gave an instruction to his son Yosef. He said, I can't remember the exact, I haven't got the exact pasuk here. He said, do me a kindness and a truth, and bury me in Machpelah. Because we said he bought the cave of Machpelah previously. So he instructed his son Yosef, don't bury me here. Do me a kindness. In Yiddish, they say, tut mir a toiva. Do me a favor. Bury me in Israel. I already paid for the plot. It cost me everything. Please bury me there. And of course, Yosef complied, and Yaakov was buried in Machpelah. And from this we learn a kindness and a truth. Kindness is chesed. Truth is emet. Rashi tells us to bury somebody, or to be involved in any of the proceedings, any of the preparations for burial, is a special mitzvah. And it's got a special name. It's called Chesed Shel Emet. The Chesed of truth. Why is it called Chesed of truth? Because it's a Chesed that's unlike any other Chesed that a person can do. Other chasadim that a person can do a favor for somebody. He could buy something for somebody. He can give tzedakah. All these things, there is a reciprocal payback of some sort. There is a hana'ah, a benefit of some sort. Whether you do a mitzvah for somebody else and they pay you back, either with money, or they might pay you back with tuvat hana'ah, by gratitude, or they owe you one. That's what they say. Oh, you really helped me. You did that mitzvah for me. I owe you one. That's also benefit. There's always some type of benefit that you have. Or it could be that you have the pride, that you know you've got that glow, that you did something for somebody. And whenever you pass that person in the street, you feel, oh, I did him a favor. That's also a type of payback. But chesed shel emet, chesed for somebody passed away, how can that person pay you back? You're not going to pass him by in the street and get that rosy glow because he's 6 foot under. There's nothing doing along that type of... It's one-way chesed. It's chesed that does not have a payback. But there's a deeper idea here. And this I heard today. I think this is also from Rav Yaakov Neiman. Rav Yaakov Neiman was an amazing Talmid Chacham. And he says as follows. He said it's one aspect that we talk about the impossibility of the deceased person paying you back. It's true, he can't pay you back, but that's one aspect. Parenthetically, I want to add on, Rav Yaakov Neiman never said this, but I'm adding this on. You can do a chesed for the deceased, but there is a type of payback you can get from that, and that's from the relatives of the deceased. They can give you a gratitude. They can, in effect, owe you one. But that's only my own thought. I haven't seen that anywhere, so I could be wrong. So, what does it mean that this is a chesed shel emet? It's a chesed that the person who's doing it cannot possibly expect a payback. Says Rav Yaakov Neiman. It's not simply that the person who's doing the chesed for the deceased doesn't get a payback. You know what it means? It means that the person who's doing the chesed doesn't want to be paid back. He doesn't expect to be paid back. Why? Because when you deal with a burial, you do a tahara, you deal with a chevra kadisha, all these mitzvot to do with death and burial and mourning, and all these things that we don't want to hear about, that we always wish for 120 years. A person deals with this type of thing, it's unlike any other experience. Why? Because when you deal with these things, you realize the value of life. You realize to be paid back for what you did, you don't want to be paid back. That's the last thing on your mind. A person who goes to a kavura, goes to a levaya, it has an effect on a person like no other effect. You go to the levaya, you see the wife of the deceased, you see them break down in tears. I've seen it myself. I've seen some horrific sights. And you cannot fail to be affected. I've seen children, young children, 8, 9 years old, shoveling dirt, Rahman al-San, on their father's coffin. I never want to have to see anything like that again. I don't want any Jew to have to see that or experience that ever again. It's it's beyond tragedy. So when a person sees this, and when he's affected by this type of thing, is it on your mind? Oh, I did so much for this dead person. I need to be paid back. I need to have some gratitude. He has to do... It's the last thing on your mind. These things are all... They're not even in the parasha. They're not even on the horizon. Somebody who's thinking in that frame of mind, he's singing from the wrong hymn sheet. He's on a different wavelength. And that's what it means, says Rav Yaakov Neiman. It's a chesed shel emet, because a person who's involved in this type of thing has no desire to be paid back. It's the last thing on his or her mind. You reflect on life, you get the perspective of life, and anything outside of that, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And I'll tell you a beautiful story about chesed shel emet, which I've said before. Let me see if I'm doing for time. Okay, I'll finish with this story now. And I've said this before, so apologies if you heard it before. I said it about a year ago. It's very pertinent. There was a story in America of a man who was caught out in a snowstorm. He happened to have a van, a large van, because this happened a number of years ago when there's no such thing as 4x4s. People had either had a large van or you got stuck in the snow. There was no such thing as like a family SUV or a Jeep or whatever that all the Jewish mothers have. That's it. You don't have one of these big HGV vans or whatever, that big transport vans, then forget it, you're lost. So it happened, it was a few feet of snow in a certain part of America. And this man, he had a van and he was going around and he happened to go to a certain kosher store. And he went into the kosher store and surprisingly enough, it was open. And the woman was behind the till. It was a big store and there was nobody there. So he's walking, he thinks, great. He starts buying stuff. And he notices there's a lady right at the back of the store. And she's picking off a few bits and pieces from the shelf. And he looks at her and he thinks to himself, this woman doesn't look Jewish. And he picks up his courage and he says to this lady, he said, lady, I can't help but noticing, but you know this is a kosher store. You can buy food in any store and I'm sure it's much cheaper. Why are you buying food here? The products here are generally more expensive because they're supervised for Jewish consumption and they carry a price tag on them. So she says, no, I'm here to buy kosher food. It's not for me, it's for somebody else. So he said to her, oh, that's interesting. She said, yes, I have a neighbor in my flat. And it happened that one time I noticed that this elderly man, he needed to buy some shopping. So I wanted to do a good deed for the day. I knew this old couple lived in my building. So I went to them and I said, would you like me to do your shopping for you? Oh, yes, they said. And I went out and I bought their shopping. And I brought it back. And I said, here's the things you wanted. And they looked in the bag and they saw margarine and the cheese or whatever. They said, no. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I didn't tell you we don't eat some of these foods. We're Jewish and we need kosher food. I said, what's kosher food? And they explained to me what it was. And I apologized. I said, okay. So at that point, I went to a kosher shop and I bought them kosher food. And I took on to do their shopping on a weekly basis. And I've been doing it for the past 3 years. This non-Jewish lady said to this Jewish man in that store, in the snowstorm. And of course, this Jewish man was absolutely flabbergasted. He couldn't believe this woman what an amazing lady. He said, ma'am, I don't know how you got here. I don't know how you're going to get home. She goes, actually, I don't know how I'm going to get home either. I'm stuck in the snowstorm. He said, you know what? I have a van. Let me take you home. Let me take you back to that apartment block. I'll take you and your shopping. Come with me. She said, thank you so much. Of course, this man was a frum man and he did a big Kiddush Hashem. He took the lady home. Just before he was saying goodbye to her, he said to her, lady, you know what? Let me give you my card. If ever you need any help, day or night, here's my cell phone number. Ring that number and I'll come and I'll help you. Because I think what you did is fantastic. She said, oh, thank you so much, whatever. And of course, with these things, nothing ever happens, nobody gets in touch, and the story's forgotten. A number of years later, at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, this Jewish fellow is sound asleep, everything's all forgotten, he gets a phone call, picks up the phone, huh? Said, is that Pinchas, whatever. Yeah, who's that? You remember me? You met me? You picked me up in the shop? You gave me a lift home? He says, no, I don't remember. So it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I was rubbing his eyes. And she explained again. And he goes, oh, I remember you. How are you doing? She said, I'm so sorry to call you in the morning. Oh, don't worry. I'm sure he was lying. I'm sure he was upset to be woken up. He didn't mention it. So she said, I need your help. Do you remember that couple I was buying the shopping for? Because a number of years ago, the wife of the family, she passed away. So I kept on with the custom. I was buying for the husband, or it could have been the husband died and the wife, I think it was the wife died. And she would continue doing the shopping for the husband. She goes, and now tonight, would you believe it? the husband died as well. And I remember hearing something that you Jews are different. You've got different customs. You've got different laws. And you have to be buried in a different way. And I knew that this man had to be buried in a Jewish way. I didn't know how. But now, the state are going to take this dead body away, and they're going to throw him in the public graveyard and throw him in. And they're not going to say any of your Jewish prayers. So I thought to myself, I don't want this to happen. And I had nobody to call. And it's 3 a.m, and I called you, can you help me? Of course, when this fellow heard this, he said, tell them, first of all, stay where you are. Tell them, don't touch the body. Tell them, your Jewish friend is coming over. He's going to handle everything. What did he do? Put the phone down. He put his clothes on. He got out of the house quick as he could. He phones Hastolah on the way. He's half putting on his jacket. He's getting in the car. He zooms down to the address. He gets there. They're about to put the body in a body bag. They're going to bury it in the local non-Jewish cemetery. He says, oh, hold on. This is a Jewish body. It needs a Jewish burial. And of course, he's arguing, and he wins the argument, and he manages to get the fellow buried get the body to have a tahara, and gets a proper Jewish burial with all the brachos and everything. And that's the end of the story. What a beautiful story. Let's analyze this story. Look at this fellow who died. Look how he started off the whole story originally. How somebody offered to buy him some shopping, and then he got the shopping and he said, no ma'am. He wasn't particularly religious at all. But for him, kashrut was one thing. It could be that he was bought non-kosher meat, and he said, I don't have non-kosher meat. And through that, he caused somebody else to buy him kosher week after week after week. And then the fellow in the shop who sees this obviously non-Jewish looking lady, he offers her a lift home. He does a Kiddush Hashem. How is that man repaid for his Kiddush Hashem? For his act of selflessness? He's repaid by doing a mitzvah which in and of itself is the greatest selflessness, the greatest chesed. This man, this tzaddik, was given an opportunity to bury another Jew, b'kedusha over tahara. The greatest chesed, as we mentioned now, the chesed shel emet. One simple act of selflessness, taking the lady back to her house and giving her his card. Look what a chesed, what an opportunity he had to do. That's chesed shel emet. That's the reward for somebody who puts himself out. That's the reward for somebody who says, I'm not going to sleep on a pillow, and I don't care if it takes 1 year or 1 month or 10 years until my Rebbe gets better. That's the reward. The selfless chesed shel emet. But lastly, one last point. How does Sefer Bereshit end? You know what the last pasuk here? We've talked about this previously. Vayamot Yosef. Yosef died. Ben Me'ah ve'esar shanim, 110 years old. Vayachantu oto, and they embalmed him. Vayisem ba'aram b'Mitzrayim, and they put him in a box in Egypt. Chazak, chazak, v'nid chazek. That sounds like an anticlimax. You're talking about Yosef. What about the beautiful stuff? What about the blessings? What about the whole end of the story with the brothers? What about the happiness? What's this? Yosef died. They put him in a they put him in a mummy, or they put the mummifying stuff on him, and they put him in a box. Finished. Yeah, we're all so happy. We're dancing. Chazak, chazak, we need to chazak. What's going on? So in previous years, we mentioned that this part is the greatest part, because this pasuk is talking about how Yosef stayed in Egypt and he only came to Eretz Yisrael with the Geula. But I want to say something slightly different. Because what does it mean that he was buried in a box? His father was buried in Israel. Why wasn't Yosef buried in Israel? You know why? because he stayed in Egypt. He could have easily been buried in Shechem or anywhere else in Israel. He stayed in Egypt. Why? He said, I'm staying put here because I will help bring the Geula. You put me in a box. Forget about my kavod. Forget about my ultimate burial place in Israel. I'm being mavatar on that. I'm staying put here. You know why? Because I'm staying put here to give the Jews hope. And when he gave that message, what do we say after that? A hope. To know that the Geula is going to come with Yosef, we say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. What does it mean? Be strong, be strong. The next word, v'nit chazek. And be strengthened. How do we be strengthened? Because we know the future holds chizuk, v'nit chazek in the future. In the future, after Yosef was buried, in the future, there's something to look forward to. There's the Geula to look forward to. There's Yosef's remains being taken to Israel and the Geula, the redemption. What more positive, beautiful message is there than that? So this is the message we have to have in our time as well. Chazak, chazak, be strong, v'nit chazek. Know that before the Geula it's going to be hard. We're going to have our Yosef buried in a box. We're going to have our Mashiach sitting quietly, not being revealed, not coming to bring the Geula. He's there, he's quiet. It's like he's in a box somewhere. He hasn't shown himself. But with this message, we've got to say, V'nit chazek. We've got to strengthen ourselves for the future, knowing that just like Yosef was in a box, that he would come out and go to Eretz Yisrael and bring the Geula, so too Mashiach Tzidkenu, may he come speedily in our times. May he come and reveal himself. He will reveal himself. We will strengthen ourselves and we will see Mashiach in our time and he will bring the Geula and we will all go to Yisrael and have the Geula Shleima Bimhera B'Yameinu Amen V'Amen.